everybody! It is officially 2025, and boy is it good to be a Nintendo fan, because this year we are getting the Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever the heck they end up deciding to call it. So today I'm going to do my standard tradition of my yearly Nintendo predictions for this year, and I'm very excited to run through them all with you guys, as well as looking at last year's and seeing how I did, in 2024. So, without any further ado, buckle on in, because it's gonna be a good ride going through Nintendo's 2025. So, without any further ado, here we go. Firstly, before we dive into 2025, let's reflect a little bit on 2024 and how I did with my predictions of last year. So, bobbing, there's my my predictions from last year, and I wasn't horribly off. You see, I did get Luigi's Mansion correct, though I thought it was an HD collection instead of just 2 HD. I thought they were going to do a little more, and I did predict a new Mario Party in October, which did end up happening. But other than that, yeah, no, I wasn't really close at all. So, hey, last year is last year, and now we're gonna move on to this year. Now, looking at last year's calendar, I decided, you know what, this calendar is boring. It doesn't represent the true excitement of Nintendo fans enough, or just, the Nintendo vibe of colorful happiness. So, I actually custom made a calendar for this year's predictions, and it's going to be the new calendar going forward. Boom! Look at it, oh yeah, all red and stuff. Really cool looking. So, without any further ado, let's get diving into filling in this calendar and talking about 2025. One quick thing though I do want to plug in here before I get into that is that this year's going to be a little bit different in I'm not going to include Nintendo Switch Online titles like I have in years past. It's one that's really hard to kind of be like, oh, this is a game, from whatever system they're going to release this year. I'm going to stick to just mainline releases for the Nintendo Switch as well as the Nintendo Switch 2. So, now, let's get into January, where we already know what's coming in January. It is going to be Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. This game we already know about, we've seen lots of trailers, lots of promos, we know it's coming, and I feel like, lots of fans are kind of mixed on it because they're like, it's kind of getting the Luigi's Mansion 2 HD kind of reception where it's like, they could have done more with it, or more so, people just wanted a new Donkey Kong game. So, obviously, lots of Nintendo fans aren't the happiest with this announcement, with this game coming out, but it's here, it's coming, it is coming out on January 16th, so it's here. For those of you, I like Donkey Kong Country Returns. I played it on the 3DS, so I'm probably not going to pick it up day one on the Switch, but it's probably one I will pick up later down the road. In February, I'm going to make the bold prediction that there's going to be no major releases this month for Nintendo. I feel like this month is going to be a lot of recovery because I think that in January they will announce the Nintendo Switch 2, and I feel like just so that nothing's overshadowed, I feel like February is just going to be kind of blank, so that they can talk a little bit more about the Switch 2 and kind of market it a little bit and, get fans excited for it without having to worry about a game being overshadowed by the news. So, I think that it makes sense that this month is empty. Nothing at all. So for March is another game that we actually already have confirmed, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I believe that's the full name of the game. This game is coming out on March 20th, and this remaster has gotten a lot of actually warm reception as opposed to Donkey Kong Country because of the fact that this is the last Xenoblade game that needed to make its way over to the Nintendo Switch, so fans are very happy about its return, especially because it was originally stuck on the Wii U, so having it here for many Xenoblade fans is a really good thing, and yeah, I'm not going to pick it up. I'm not a Xenoblade fan, but for those of you who are Xenoblade fans, that's a pretty cool one for you guys to get. Okay, everything from this point on is going to be pure speculation, because from this point onwards, nothing has been confirmed. Nothing has been, no release dates have been announced from this point on. So, here we go. In April, I think we're going to get Pokemon Legends, was it A through Z, whatever that is, the new Pokemon Legends game. Now, this game did get announced quite a while ago, but we haven't really heard anything of it. So it is kind of bold putting it this early, you know, in the year, but I feel like they're not really going to hold on to this one too long. I feel like stretching this one out, I mean, hey, if they release it towards the end of the year in November for their typical Pokemon release slot, then that could also make sense. But I do feel like releasing it earlier in the year also makes sense, again, because of the whole Switch 2 thing, and this is a Switch 1 game. Not saying that cross-gen titles or games that come out on the Switch 1, you know, while the Switch 2 is out, like, not saying that that's not possible, but I do think that, given that this is Pokemon, they'll want to push this one out before the new system comes out. So, we'll have to wait and see on this one. I feel like this is my more uncertain predictions. This is a game that actually moved around quite a bit on my calendar. So I just kind of ended up putting it here. So, we'll see if it comes true, but I'm not optimistic on this one. Okay, so I think this is going to be my boldest prediction yet. I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to come out in May. I think the Nintendo Switch 2, now this is my personal opinion, I'm not going based off of what people are saying, I'm not going based off of any leaks, I'm not going based off of any of that stuff. I'm just going based off of what my personal opinion is. If they announce it in January, I feel like 4 months, you know, of a cycle to, you know, market the system and get it ready to be shipped to retailers and all that. I think 4 months is a decent amount of time to build the hype up. That's basically what the Nintendo Switch got. Getting, like, formally announced in October and then releasing the following March, so about 5 months. So kind of the same-ish gap here. But more importantly, what are the launch titles going to be? What are going to be the games that come out when the system comes out? The first game I'm going to predict is going to be the kind of bigger one, the one that I feel like most people are going to be like, ooh, that's good, we like that. And it's Mario Kart. I mean, Mario Kart, you know, hasn't been around, like, we haven't had a new Mario Kart game technically since 8, you know, back on the Wii U, but obviously, you know, we got Deluxe and the Booster Course Pass, and I feel like it all builds up to a new Mario Kart that could come out at launch. I feel like it's one of those things where, you know, because of the fact that, you know, Nintendo really wants to push the Switch 2, you know, as, you know, the new console and doesn't want a repeat of the Wii U situation, they need to launch the console with a console seller, a game that will guarantee to sell units, and Mario Kart is one of, if not the biggest one that you could ask for. So I think launching with Mario Kart is not only a smart idea, but I think even Nintendo is smart enough to be like, yeah, that just makes the most sense. The second prediction of a launch title, because I think Nintendo are going to launch with 2 first-party titles. Of course, other titles are going to launch alongside them from other companies, but Nintendo-wise, this might be a controversial take. I know many people don't agree with this one, but I think that Metroid Prime 4 could sell alongside Mario Kart and be a launch title. The main reason being, Metroid Prime 4, looking at the, you know, the footage of, you know, gameplay on the Switch, it is a very visually impressive game, and I do feel like it would be one to really benefit from getting Switch 2ified, from having a Switch 2 version. Now, of course, having 2 versions of the game, you know, like the Switch 1 version will most likely sell better than the Switch 2 version, or even vice versa, because of install size and all of that, but I still think it's something that Nintendo might do just to increase how many people are exposed to Metroid Prime 4. You know, many people might pass regularly on Metroid Prime 4, but if it's a new launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2, then, you know, people might get it. Just like 1-2 Switch, right? 1-2 Switch sold decently well, not because it looked good or anything, but because it was a launch title and came out right when the Switch came out. Not saying that Metroid Prime 4 doesn't look good, but that's what I'm saying, though. Like, it'll be one of the only Switch 2 titles available at launch. People might be more incentivized to buy it. But, you know, on the flip side, the Switch 1, well, guess what? The Switch 1 has a huge install base and a decent amount of Metroid fans that already have a Switch. So I feel like you can't go wrong by releasing it on both consoles. Now, obviously, you know, I'm not an expert on game sales and marketing and all that, so I could be completely off base because I know there's a lot of people who say it's a horrible idea to release Metroid Prime 4 as a dual title for Switch 1 and Switch 2, but I kind of think it makes sense for something like Metroid, so we'll have to wait and see. All the titles from this point forward are going to be specifically Switch 2 titles, so I'm not going to be predicting any late-term Switch 1 titles, which, let's be honest, are probably going to be mostly remasters and remakes and all of that jazz. All of this stuff onwards is stuff that I think is going to be Switch 2 exclusive. So, firstly, I think it's safe to say for June is usually a lighter month for Nintendo. Not a month where they release a big, heavy-hitting release. I can't really think of one year in the Switch's lifespan where they did release a big game in June. But what I will say is I do think it will be the Pink Puffball's first appearance on the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm not sure if it'll be a 2D game like Return to Dreamland Deluxe or a 3D game like Forgotten Land, but Kirby is usually a pretty common and pretty safe guess for Switch titles, and I feel like Nintendo would want to release a Kirby game early on because he's a more casual Nintendo character for a more casual audience, as opposed to something like Metroid Prime, where it's a single-player experience, but it's obviously more mature, and then Mario Kart is obviously a family multiplayer experience. So, we'll have to wait and see, but I think Kirby for June could potentially happen. Okay, July is an interesting month. There are some years where July doesn't really get much, where July, there's not really much happening. But then there's other years where it's like, oh, we'll release Splatoon 2, or we'll release a new Fire Emblem. Like, there's years where they decide to release something big. I think this is going to be one of those years where it's kind of in the middle, where it's not a big game that they released, but it might be a big deal for some people. And I'm going to predict Star Fox. I know Star Fox in the very beginning, before something like a big Mario game or a new Legend of Zelda, is a bold prediction, but I'm saying this because of the fact that Star Fox skipped out on a generation, and he usually doesn't. I mean, I think he skipped out on the Wii generation, but nevertheless, I think that having Star Fox come back for the Switch 2 would be pretty dang cool, again, because of, you know, the processing power that the Switch 2 could potentially have. Having a cool outer space shooter with really cool graphics, really good graphics, I feel like would be a great graphical showcase for the Switch 2 if they could get it right. And I think having this, Star Fox game would also just be good for the variety's sake of the current Nintendo lineup of games, having a space shooter out there. So, we'll see. I'm not confident in this one either, but we'll have to wait and see. August is going to be another month where I'm like, I don't know if Nintendo is going to do a game. I feel like Nintendo wants to give third parties a bit of room to breathe as well. I mean, listen, we also just had, 4 heavy-hitting titles within the past few months. So I feel like, giving Nintendo a month to breathe, maybe, letting people get some other games, that month, would kind of make sense as well. You're giving us a good variety of games for the first few months. Giving us a month off isn't going to be the end of the world. So I do think August, we're not really going to see anything. September, I do think we're going to see our first remaster for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, this is the only one on the list that I can say might also be a Switch 1 thing, could be a Switch 1 or a Switch 2 thing, but we've heard about these games for so dang long, I think it's possible we could finally get a Wind Waker HD. Now, I'm not going to lump Twilight Princess HD in there because I do feel like Nintendo aren't going to lump both of them together. It's Nintendo. They're going to sell Wind Waker HD for like 50 or 60 bucks and just ship it out to us with maybe some minor quality of life improvements, at least anything additional to what they did in the Wii U version of the game. But I would be excited for this one because it's another GameCube game that you could play portably on the Switch/Switch 2, and I feel like it'd be really, really good to have Wind Waker here because it is also just a really solid game, and because it would give something for the Zelda fans, to feast upon for the Switch 2 generation, because I don't think a new Zelda game would be ready in the first year. Spoiler alert, there's no new Zelda on this list. So I think giving a remaster of a classic that many people have been asking for is a good way to satisfy Zelda fans until they have their next big title. Alright, October. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make the prediction. The first time I've made this a actual solid prediction, I'm gonna predict Luigi's Mansion 4. Luigi's Mansion 3 sold like hotcakes on the Nintendo Switch. And, you know, given that there hasn't really been much Mario support, which I'll get into in a little bit, I do feel like having a Luigi title here, specifically one as popular as Luigi's Mansion, around Halloween time, could be a really, really good one, especially because October is really scheduled for, like, things like Mario Party, and I'm assuming there's not going to be a new one this year. I think that having a new Luigi's Mansion game, again, just like I said with Star Fox, to be a graphical showcase for what the Nintendo Switch 2 can do, I feel like would be a great move by Nintendo to, you know, really bring more fans in. And for me, as a Luigi's Mansion fan, you know, as many problems as I had with Luigi's Mansion 3, I'm really excited to see what they do with the 4th game, how they listen to the feedback from the 3rd game and apply it to a new game, and I think it would be really cool. So hopefully this one's accurate. Again, I don't know if it's gonna be, but Next Level games typically have a dev cycle of 3 years for each game that they make, and the last game they released was Mario Strikers Battle League back in 2022. So 3 years later, 2025, we could see another Luigi's Mansion. I think it's possible, and I really hope it happens. Okay, so I'm going to address the elephant in the room that people might be commenting. This year is Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary. And it's definitely not like the biggest milestone. Something like 50 will obviously be Mario's big milestone, but it is a 10s year, which does make this year a little bit bigger than something like the 35th. So I do think it does make sense for this year to be another kind of Mario-heavy year, which is why I included stuff like Mario Kart and Luigi's Mansion on the list. But, of course, I can't go this year without predicting for November a new 3D Mario game. A new 3D Mario game. Obviously, we haven't had one since Odyssey, and that was 8 years ago this year, which is kind of crazy to think about. 8 years. But I think it'd be really, really cool to have a new 3D Mario game. Again, given that we're not getting something like a new Zelda or some of the other bigger Nintendo franchises. I mean, we got Mario Kart early in the year, but I do think having a new 3D Mario would be really, really cool to bring in 3D platforming fans. Because like I said earlier, I think this year should be about having a decent variety of games for all sorts of people to play to attract as many possible people as you can to the Nintendo Switch 2. And I feel like having a new 3D Mario added to the mix here really does do that. So, 3D Mario for November. I kind of don't want it to be an Odyssey 2. I want it to be a fresh idea. Something new, something creative, something innovative, and maybe something a little better than Odyssey. Listen, I know I always say this, but I'm not a huge fan of Odyssey. It was definitely not up there with being my favorite Mario game, so I don't know. Hopefully they release something good, and I can't wait to see what they do regardless. Lastly, for December, I don't think they're going to release any games. I think the new 3D Mario game is going to be their main holiday seller. With the whole lineup of games that Nintendo, I mean, according to my predictions, would have coming up this year, I feel like they have more than enough to get through their first holiday season with what they have. I feel like if they release too many games too early, then future years may be more dry because Nintendo's just, you know, pumping out games like no one's business. So there you have it, guys. That is my calendar for this year. Obviously, there are a few big series omitted. No Legend of Zelda, no Splatoon, no real mainline Pokemon game, you know, unless you count Legends, of course. No Splatoon, I don't know if I said that. No Smash Brothers. Like, there's a lot that isn't here, and that's okay. Some people might expect all of those big things, but of course that's not all gonna come out this year. I mean, 2017 is kind of the oddball exception, I feel like, in terms of Nintendo releasing such big titles all within 1 year, and it was kind of because they had to. They had to release all those big titles all in 1 year because of the fact that if they didn't, they could have another flop. And I feel like, you know, Nintendo don't need to put as much pressure on themselves to release the big games so early. So I feel like this predictions list might be pretty solid, and I'd be really interested to hear what you all have to say. So I would like to thank you all so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. All that stuff down below. Tickle the notification bell so you can be notified of when I upload videos. And until next time, you guys, I will see you all in the next video.